Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Short Thing. With this week, it's Ant-Mania, baby! It's all over the show. They want us to go watch it. We're gonna go watch it. But first, we have to look at what came before because this is the MCU and there's 3,000 entries. So you have to do a little bit of a recap. I, for one, was very happy we went back to this. Ant-Man, thoughts, feelings?
Ant-Man, the original one, the one that came in phase one, but just after Avengers, that little appendix. As I said, I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to enjoy it. It was actually a nice little palate cleanser to all the other MCU going on, all the lasers, you know, you know, great.
This is very grounded.
Mm.
My opinion has definitely softened on this. I didn't care much for it when it came out, and I do still have like a few criticisms. But yeah, this was a lot of fun going back to it. Paul Rudd, what a treat! I'm not gonna lie. Paul Rudd is a comedic genius, I think. But Michael Pena, though, his little Mexican friend, steals the show in this.
It really does. He is pretty fun, pretty hilarious. But I also like his sidekick. I don't know what the guy's name is. The one that cries out.
It's the World Cup gypsies.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I was also like a hoot and a half. Um, I must say I did enjoy Paul Rudd. He actually takes the very camp topic of Ant-Man, because that's a lot of camp just in the name, just in the premise. He's a guy that can like shrink really tiny and he has ant friends. That is a ridiculous like premise, and having to like deal with that as a character, um, and take it seriously, I think that is kind of quite the feat. Like making it work is quite the feat. I give points to everybody in charge, everybody involved, because making the idea of he's a little guy and he has ant friends, making that fit into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, yo, that's actually a tall order. Um,
But nicely done if you look back at it, because I feel like today, obviously, we know Ant-Man because he's used to explain a lot of the science that comes in. Like he did a lot of the groundwork for what happens in Endgame, and obviously a lot of what happened in the first movie is going to come back now with Quantum Realm and the second one, obviously. So a lot of that groundwork's been laid, and he's good for that. He's definitely, you use the word palate cleanser, and it's definitely what it's meant to be. I think just in the beginning we were all riding so high on Avengers. When Ant-Man came, we were like, "Ooh, this is a step back, isn't it?" But it's not. It's really not. Look, just off the top, before we really get into it, we're not going to go into the makings of and where the special effects is. Ant-Man, I'm sure, has been talked. We're not going to come up with any groundbreaking theories about the movie or anything like that. We're just plainly just going to talk where we are, what this character is, what he means for the MCU, and looking back at a more grounded MCU, how much fun it is. Because this is what I like about Ant-Man, is that he doesn't have any weapons in his suit. It's just a guy, and he has to use his wits and his quick thinking and his insane parkour skills to save the day. And we don't get that anymore at all.
and even like in the first phase, he stood out because he's let's call him Avenger, but he's the first character, the first Avenger we got that has been to prison, which is already like a far ways off
That's
to
true.
like
Of
the white knightness of Captain America, you know. Um, so the first Avenger we got that was a thief. That was his like main thing, and then also interestingly, the first Avenger with a kid as his motivation, not a dad, not a love interest, but you know his daughter, and that does make him like, even though he's a criminal, he's very endearing because of that. And that is actually an interesting like setup for the first phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Though it's definitely, you make an interesting point. It is a little bit offbeat in the, because they're all soldiers and they're all, we've been fighting for the right thing all along, except maybe for Hulk, but he has his own thing going. But it's, yeah, definitely the first one that's like Hawkeye. We now know had children back then, but it wasn't used as like motivation. It was part of his arc or anything. That's really interesting. Actually, I didn't think about that. It's true though. I do agree that Paul Rudd absolutely pulls this off though, like 100%. But everybody does quite well. It is mostly saved by the fact that the movie is very light and everyone's very lighthearted and everyone is very likable. Like even his family, where generally it's the stepdad is also horrible and everyone hates him, and but there's none of that. You like him just as much. He's a good guy.
Yeah, I guess the only guy is Darren Cross. He's so like obviously a major douchebag.
Yeah, they
Which
do spoon feed you a little bit of his evil too much. I don't mind Darren. I obviously don't like him or anything like that, but I think he's a very good villain. I think he's up there with the best of them, definitely.
and it's characteristic of like the Phase One villains. They're all like these major douchebags, you know. Loki might be the most interesting one because it's all tricksy and is he good and is he evil? But if you think like it's Red Skull, it's Jebediah, is that the guy in Iron Man 1? Uh, yeah.
Absolute knob of a person.
Yes, exactly. What a knob. What a douchebag. And has a very endearing character that he adds to this. And yes, witty and quippy as well, like the rest, but that like goofy dorkiness actually like works out real well in contrast to the rest of the MCU. And you couldn't even like properly tell it was an MCU movie, really. They do that Paul Rudd gives that line where he's like, "Isn't this a job for the Avengers?" And we have Falcon because getting Robert Downey Jr. to do a cameo costs a lot of money.
Too much money.
Too much money. So we get the Falcon, and there's an A on the ceiling of the compound.
That's
that
how you
was
know.
supposed to be yeah, and it's all connected, guys, which blew our minds back then. You know, that just a little Easter egg, but it stands out like a sore thumb now if you watch this movie because it is, as I said, it's almost entirely enjoyable as a standalone movie, except for those two. Like, oh, remember this is the MCU.
Yeah, you
kind
make a
of,
very good point. When it happened, when you said that, I was actually like, oh, yeah, right. This does fit into that. That's why we're here, because of this overarching thing. But I did forget for a second, like, he fits into, like, a bigger team. I really like the story. I like the groundedness of it. I'm not going to lie. The ants still take some getting a little bit used to. That whole idea is cool, but as soon as you see him interacting with the ants, and either he is small or they're big, it's just, I don't know. Something about it is just, you're not going to sell any toys based off that, man.
Does it creep you out or is
The
it
weird
cringe?
thing. Not necessarily, but it's also not necessarily cringy. It's just, I don't know. There's just something to it that I don't quite like. Just don't know. There's just something to it. But we'll come back to this again to see if they're upholding their own laws for quantum realming. That we will definitely do as a little bit of fun. But thank you, Manan, as always. Thank you for joining me. This was lots of fun. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you next week.